Welcome to MSL Stories. Friends, if you don't mind, please subscribe to my channel. I have a dream of 1,000 subscribers. Thank you. Let's start the story. There's a distinct moment when your life splits into a before and after. For me, it was the night I saw the notification on Ella's phone. It wasn't a name I recognized, just G. But the message previewed enough. I can't wait to see you tonight. I was standing in the kitchen, still wearing my work suit. It was a Friday, and like most Fridays, I'd brought home takeout from her favorite Thai place. Ella, my wife of 9 years, was upstairs getting ready for what she claimed was a dinner with a few of her college friends. She hadn't seen them in years, and I didn't think twice about her excitement. But that message? It was a grenade. Its pin pulled. Ella was 35, charismatic and magnetic. People loved her. Her colleagues, our neighbors, even my own friends. I couldn't blame them. She had a sharp sense of humor. A way of making everyone feel special. It's part of what drew me to her in the first place. We met at a corporate mixer years ago. I was just climbing the ladder at my firm, and she was an HR manager with aspirations of becoming a director. We both wanted to build something stable, a family, a life, or so I thought. I set the takeout bags on the counter and stared at her phone, which she had left charging near the kitchen sink. Curiosity whispered to me like a devil on my shoulder. I wasn't a snoop by nature, but the tone of that message didn't sit right. Before I knew it, I unlocked her phone, a shared passcode she never thought to change, and opened her messages. The thread confirmed what I feared. Dinner wasn't with her college friends. G, as it turned out, was Greg, an ex-boyfriend she rarely mentioned. I scrolled up and saw photos of expensive dinners, tickets to concerts I didn't even know she attended, and, most damning of all, a picture of them together. It was taken at a lake house. She wore a sundress I didn't recognize, leaning into him with a laugh that made my stomach twist. I didn't say anything right away. When she came downstairs, dressed in a sleek black dress I hadn't seen in years, I handed her the takeout bag and kissed her cheek like nothing was wrong. As she drove away, I opened my laptop and began my search. Greg's name brought up more than I expected. He was newly wealthy, apparently from a tech startup that had recently sold for millions. He lived 2 towns over, in a gated community I'd driven past but never thought to explore. His Instagram was private, but the bio read, "Building an empire, finally living the life I deserve." By the time Ella returned home that night, smelling faintly of perfume I didn't buy her, I had a plan. Ella walked through the door just after midnight, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. I stayed in the living room, pretending to be half asleep on the couch, but my mind was racing. She gave me a quick smile, one that didn't quite meet her eyes, and muttered something about her dinner being great. Then she disappeared upstairs. I didn't follow her. Instead, I waited until I heard the soft click of our bedroom door shutting before I got to work. My first call was to Damien, my closest friend and a private investigator. Damien wasn't just any PI. He specialized in uncovering the kinds of secrets people worked hard to bury. I'd helped him out years ago when his company was hit with a messy lawsuit, and we'd been tight ever since. If anyone could help me expose the truth, it was him. "I need you to dig into someone," I said, keeping my voice low. "Gregory Tillman. I'll email you what I know." "Trouble at home?" Damien asked. He didn't press when I didn't answer. While Damien started his work, I went through Ella's social media. She wasn't careless enough to post anything incriminating, but there were subtle changes I hadn't noticed before. A recent photo of her in a new dress with a vague caption, "Some moments are worth everything." A tagged photo at a gallery opening where Greg had been one of the sponsors. Each piece was small on its own, but together, they painted a picture of a woman I didn't recognize. The next morning, I decided to test the waters. Over breakfast, I casually mentioned Greg's name. "Greg Tillman," I said, sipping my coffee. "Didn't you say he was an old friend of yours?" Her fork froze midway to her mouth and she blinked twice before answering. "Yeah, we dated years ago. Why?" "I think I saw his name in the news," I lied. "Something about his company." She shrugged, her expression carefully neutral. "He's done well for himself. Good for him." Her tone was nonchalant, but her eyes betrayed her. They flickered, just for a moment, as if she was waiting to see if I'd push further. I didn't. Not yet. Damien called me 3 days later with an update. He'd been efficient, as always. "You're not going to like this," he said, his tone grave. "Your wife's been meeting with this guy for over a year. Fancy dinners, weekend trips, the whole 9 yards. He's been footing the bill, too. Private jets, luxury hotels, it's all there in the receipts." He sent me a file with photos and transaction records. There was no denying it now. Ella had been living a double life. And Greg wasn't just some casual fling. He was actively trying to lure her back into his world. Damien even uncovered messages where Greg bragged to his friends about winning her back. But the final blow came when Damien revealed something I hadn't expected. "He's not just after her," he said. "He's after your business." My stomach sank. I co-owned a mid-sized marketing firm that had been growing steadily for years. We weren't on the same level as Greg's company, but we were getting there. According to Damien, Greg had been making moves to poach some of my top clients. It wasn't just personal, it was professional sabotage. That night, I confronted Ella. I didn't go in guns blazing. Instead, I let her dig her own grave. "Do you ever think about how we got here?" I asked as we sat on the couch, the TV flickering in the background. She looked at me, puzzled. "What do you mean?" 8 years, I said, leaning back. 2 kids, a house, we've built so much together. But sometimes I wonder if there's something missing. If maybe you feel like you settled. Her eyes widened slightly and she hesitated before responding. "Why would you say that? Are you unhappy?" "I'm not," I lied. "But I get the feeling you might be." She started to speak, then stopped. For a moment I thought she might come clean, but instead she gave me a tight smile. "You're overthinking. Everything's fine." Her deflection only confirmed what I already knew. She wasn't going to admit anything. Not until she had no other choice. The next day I called my lawyer. We'd signed a prenuptial agreement before our wedding, one that heavily favored me in the event of infidelity. It had been Ella's idea at the time, a gesture of trust. Now, it was my safety net. "I want to move forward quietly," I told my lawyer. "She can't know what's coming." "Understood," he replied. "But if she's hiding assets or planning anything, we'll need to act fast." We began preparing the paperwork. I also updated my will, transferring ownership of my share in the business to a trust for my children. Ella wouldn't get a dime. The final piece of my plan came together when Damien uncovered a recording. It was a phone call between Ella and Greg, taken just 2 days prior. In it, Greg made it clear that he was tired of waiting. "I don't care about your husband," he said. "You need to make a choice. Him or me." Ella hesitated, then laughed softly. "You know it's not that simple." "It is if you want the life I'm offering you," Greg shot back. "Drop the dead weight." That phrase, "drop the dead weight," echoed in my mind long after I heard it. They didn't just betray me, they dismissed me entirely. I wasn't about to let that stand. In betrayal, timing is everything. If you act too soon, you might give away your hand. Too late, and they slip through your fingers. I had no intention of rushing. I wanted everything in place before I made my move. Ella's behavior became more erratic over the following weeks. She was distracted at home, often glued to her phone, or inventing excuses to leave the house. She thought I didn't notice when she disappeared for hours on end. But every time she left, Damien tracked her. The places she went, the people she met, it was all documented. Greg, it seemed, was growing impatient. Ella, on the other hand, was still hedging her bets. I could see it in the way she kept up appearances at home, smiling over dinner or helping the kids with their homework as if nothing was wrong. She wanted to keep me as her backup plan. But I wasn't a backup. I was the storm she didn't see coming. The first step was securing my business. Through my lawyer, I quietly updated contracts with my clients, ensuring their loyalty to me. I also had Damien dig into Greg's attempts to poach them. Using the information he found, I contacted a few of my clients directly and warned them of Greg's tactics. He'd been making underhanded offers, trying to undermine me, but my clients weren't impressed. In fact, they were eager to support me once they understood what was happening. Then I began laying the groundwork for a public confrontation. Damien unearthed every piece of evidence we could use against Ella and Greg. Photos, messages, receipts, and even the recorded phone call. My lawyer helped compile everything into an airtight case, both for the divorce and for the inevitable fallout that would follow. I didn't want to just confront them privately. That would be too easy. I needed a stage, a moment where their betrayal would be laid bare for everyone to see. The opportunity came when Ella suggested hosting a small dinner party for our anniversary. She claimed it was her way of rekindling things between us. I agreed, playing the role of the oblivious husband. The guest list was small. Just a few close friends, family, and our neighbors. Ella was radiant that night, dressed in a flowing blue gown, her hair styled perfectly. She greeted everyone with warmth, laughing and chatting as if she didn't have a care in the world. I waited until after dinner when the mood was light and everyone was relaxed. Then I stood, raising my glass for a toast. "To Ella," I began, my voice steady, "for 9 years of marriage and countless memories. and for teaching me some of the most valuable lessons I've ever learned." Ella smiled, clearly pleased with herself, but her expression faltered as I continued. "You've taught me about trust," I said, "and what happens when it's broken, about loyalty and how fragile it can be, and most of all about resilience, because when someone tries to tear you down, you have to stand tall and fight back." The room grew quiet. Ella's smile vanished entirely. I turned to the guests and added, "And I think it's only fair to share some of those lessons with all of you." I gestured to Damien, who was waiting in the corner with a laptop. He connected it to the TV, and the screen lit up with a photo of Ella and Greg at the lake house, smiling like newlyweds. The next slide was a message exchange, followed by a series of receipts for hotels, dinners, and gifts. Gasps filled the room as each piece of evidence played out on the screen. Ella stood frozen, her face pale. What is this?" she stammered. "It's the truth," I said, my voice sharp. "The truth about how you've been sneaking around with Greg for the past 2 years while pretending to be a loyal wife and mother. The truth about how you lied to me, to our kids, and to everyone in this room." Ella tried to defend herself, but the damage was done. The guests were horrified, and whispers of betrayal spread like wildfire. I didn't stop there. I handed each guest a printed packet with the full evidence, ensuring no one could deny what they'd seen. As for Greg, he wasn't in the room, but I made sure he felt the fallout. I'd already sent the same evidence to his business partners, exposing his unethical behavior and personal scandals. Within days, his reputation was in shambles, and several deals he'd been working on fell through. Ella's fury erupted once the guests had left. "How could you humiliate me like that?" she screamed. "How could you betray me?" I shot back, my voice cold. "You didn't just cheat on me, Ella. You cheated on our family, on everything we built together. And now you'll face the consequences." I handed her the divorce papers that night. The prenup was ironclad. She wouldn't see a penny of my business or personal assets. Instead, I ensured the majority of our shared property would go into a trust for our kids. Ella stared at the divorce papers as if they were a bomb about to go off. She tried every tactic she could think of, pleading, blaming, even threatening. "You can't do this to me. We have a family, for God's sake. Think about the kids." I kept my voice steady, though every word I said was razor sharp. "I am thinking about them. That's why they're the only ones who will benefit from this mess. You made your choices, Ella, and now you'll live with them." Her desperation turned to rage. "You think you're so righteous? What about me? What about all the sacrifices I've made for this family? You worked late nights while I held everything together. Do you even realize how lonely I was?" I refused to let her spin the narrative. "You don't get to rewrite history. I gave you everything, Ella. Love, stability, a life people dream of. But that wasn't enough for you. You wanted more, and you didn't care who you had to betray to get it." The divorce proceedings were swift. The evidence of her infidelity was overwhelming, and the prenup left no room for negotiation. Ella's lawyer tried to argue for more custody of the kids, claiming I was too focused on work to be a proper parent. But I'd already anticipated this move. In the weeks leading up to the court date, I had started spending more time with our children, Lila, age 7, and Max, age 5. I made sure I was present for every school drop-off, every bedtime story, and every soccer practice. Their teachers and caregivers submitted glowing statements about my involvement, while Ella's recent absences spoke volumes. In the end, the judge awarded me primary custody, with Ella granted visitation rights. Ella left the courtroom with nothing but a pale face and a quiet sob. Greg didn't fare any better. The evidence Damien and I gathered had been sent to his business associates, investors, and even his local community board. In an ironic twist, Greg's house was part of an upscale gated community with a strict moral conduct clause for its residents. Once the affair and his attempts at sabotaging my business came to light, the board voted to evict him. I heard through Damien that Greg's business suffered irreparable damage from the scandal. Investors pulled out, and key clients abandoned ship. His once promising empire crumbled within weeks. It wasn't just his professional life that fell apart. His personal life did too. Rumors spread that his fiancée, a woman he'd been engaged to before rekindling things with Ella, had left him after learning of his infidelity. Ella tried to rebuild her life, but the fallout followed her everywhere. Mutual friends distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with her betrayal. Even her family, who had always adored me, expressed their disappointment in her actions. She moved into a small apartment across town, far from the life of luxury she had grown accustomed to. The kids were hesitant to see her at first. I never spoke poorly of Ella in front of them. I didn't want my anger to taint their relationship with their mother. But children are perceptive. They noticed the changes and asked questions I wasn't always ready to answer. "Why doesn't Mommy live here anymore?" Max asked one night, clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur. I knelt beside him and chose my words carefully. "Sometimes adults make mistakes, buddy. Big ones. But no matter what, your mom and I love you and Lila very much. That will never change." It wasn't the full truth, but it was enough for now. The turning point came a few months later. Ella called, asking to meet. She sounded different. Tired, defeated. I agreed, more out of curiosity than anything else. When we met at a coffee shop, she looked like a shadow of the woman I once knew. Gone were the designer dresses and perfectly styled hair. She sat across from me, fiddling with the handle of her mug. I wanted to apologize," she said finally, "for everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to say it." I listened, but I didn't respond immediately. Her apology, though genuine, didn't erase the damage she had done. Still, there was a strange sense of closure in hearing her admit her mistakes. "Thank you for saying that," I said after a long pause. "But this isn't about me forgiving you. It's about you figuring out how to move forward." She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I hope someday you can be happy again." "I already am," I replied. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I poured my energy into my business, which thrived now that Greg was out of the picture. More importantly, I devoted myself to being the best father I could be. Lila and Max became my anchor, reminding me that even in the wake of betrayal, there was still so much to be grateful for. Damien remained a loyal friend, often dropping by with beers and unsolicited advice. "You know," he said one night, "you handled this better than most people would. Clean, efficient, and with style." I laughed. "Style wasn't the goal, justice was." "Thank you, friends."